Sit. Good boy. Good boy. Buzz. Buzz. Hey, no biting. Stop it. Hey, just
Well, hi folks, and welcome to another episode of Retro Power Uncut. And obviously I was off poorly last week, hence Cal doing the whole video. And I'm now actually poorly again. I've got a sinus infection, so I'm in today in body, but not really in mind. I'm not feeling at my best today, so you'll just have to bear with me a little bit. But yes, we're making some the final progress on the metalwork on Project Churchill now. Tom's got the rotisserie mountings made for the front and rear on this, going out through the grille on the front and out from the boot aperture on the back. Got those done. So yeah, there's quite a lot of welding going on in the background. There is the TIG seam brazing being done, which I've mentioned before. I won't go into now, but that's been done on the underside, and also some MIG finishing work being done. There's various MIG stitching being done on the underside as well that couldn't be done when the car was on the jig, so that's also being finished off. So we're on the very final stages of finishing on this, and obviously also taking the doors and bonnet and boot lid off, and they're actually being worked on in the body shop at the moment. Started the basic body prep on the doors, bonnet and boot lid through there. So yeah, the aim will be that beginning of next week we should be into blasting and zinc metal spraying this. So yeah, everything's coming together finally quite well now. It's all coming together. I think that's pretty much where we're at on Churchill. It's going to be quite brief this week, as I say, because I'm not feeling my best. In the background over there, Rich is doing a bit of maintenance work on another little project we've got going on, which we'll elaborate on in a future episode. He's just prepping for paint a dust extraction unit of all things, but we'll elaborate on that in a forthcoming episode. The Redux E30 M3 progress has been on. Scott's been working on this, and Sam's been working on this. Now Scott's actually moved on to the Churchill Jag for a bit, doing some of the welding on that. But he's been working on getting the foot welds made. We have to change the shape of the bulkhead in the footwell areas on the Redux cars to allow for the larger wheels. So he's wheeled up and shaped these footwell areas on here, and then he's been working on the bulkhead on the offside, where we modify the bulkhead to accommodate the radiator header tank, the coolant tank. There's some modification work to the bulkhead there, so Scott's been doing that. Sam is working on the rear of the car. He is working on the differential mounting, because we have a modified differential mounting on this car. And yeah, there's a 3D print of it here, where the diff is mounted on two ears instead of one. Originally they were only mounted on one side. We've actually made it a double mounting on the body shell on these, just to put some additional stiffness into the differential mount, because that also carries the rear beam, the complete rear suspension assembly on the E30. So we've added some strength into that. So Sam is fabricating the modified differential mounting onto the body shell, but he's also discovered while working on that a bit of rust actually in the rear chassis rail areas where the spring seats are. Nothing too drastic, but there was evidently no coating from the factory in there. Previous examples we've not noticed this so much, but on this one, under the rear spring cup, which we replace with a different one, with a different shaped one, there's a little bit of corrosion, so he's removed the spring cups out of the way, repaired the chassis rail, and now he's putting the spring cups back on, so or the modified spring cups on. So that's pretty much where we're at on Redux M3. Moving on to Allegros. Bobby is back now. Bobby's back from his trip to Bulgaria, his dentistry that was going on. He's had a bit of a rough time of it actually. He's had quite a lot of work done and had a bit of a rough time of it over there, one way or another. But he's back now and working on the rear end. He's got the C-pillar reinforcers done. You can just see part of the C-pillar reinforcer here. He's done the same the other side. We've basically extended the original Allegro C-pillar reinforcer down to meet the inner wheel arch, and then added a bulkhead section in off the inner wheel arch to tie into that area, and also fabricated the new parcel shelf, which replaces the original one because the new parcel shelf's a little bit longer. And he's now moved on to taking off the quarter panels, as you can see, remove those, and doing the final parts of the sill fabrication. There's a transition which is sort of hidden by the B-pillar, which we can only get at once the quarter panels have been removed, so he's getting on with that. And then the next phase on from there will be getting all of the seatbelt mountings fabricated, as I say, as per the other car. So yeah, progressing well on that front, and I think that pretty much wraps up where we're at this week. As I say, a bit short and sweet. I'm not exactly feeling full of the joys at the moment. So yeah, hopefully next week I'll be back on form. See you in a week's time, and I'll hand over to Cal.
Jamie's trying to get. Well, this is where my leg got crushed and Jamie got it on camera.
Alright viewers,
Here's a shag you are 4 litre.
That's a wank idea of the engine room up 14 flights of stairs.
Oh, thank you, Nat. And you find me in the engine build room, which seems to have been a bit out of the picture lately because we've been doing a lot of cars with crate engines or engines built by other people. But as Nat has probably just shown you, Project Churchill got to the end of dry build, has been stripped apart, and the guys are just finishing metalwork, ready for it to head into paint. So now basically is the time we're going to start working on all the mechanical parts for that car, so we can get things going in the background mechanically, so that when the shell is painted, we can be reasonably ahead with it and get everything straight onto it. So that brings me to what appears to be a light commercial vehicle engine in front of me. It is in fact a Jaguar AJ16 engine, which is, I have to say, an incredibly well-engineered engine. Probably over-engineered, you might say, and it kind of harks back to a period in Jag's history where they were just producing some exceptional engineering. You know, in the E-Type days, the IRS setup they developed, which carried over for a long, long while into other cars with sort of adaptations along the way, was incredibly well-engineered. And then there was the XK6 engine, which was a great engine in its day, and then they did the AJ6, which developed into the AJ16, which I think probably didn't get the recognition it really deserved, because it was in a part of Jag's history where they were in a bit of turmoil. You know, you're talking 70s into the 80s, and then it carried on a lot later than that. But in that period, there was a lot of sort of industrial action going on, and the British car industry wasn't in a good state financially. And I don't think the budgets were there for them to really build the cars around these mechanical components that really did them justice, unfortunately. But the fundamental engineering was still exceptionally good. And these actually carried on. So the AJ6 came out, you know what, I don't know, it would have been sometime in the 80s, XJ40 era, I'd say 86, something like that. And then carried on through the XJs in X300, XJS. So this one actually came from a late model facelift XJS. And then they've also, like the Aston Martin DB7, believe it or not, essentially has this engine in it as well. There's actually a very close link, and an Aston Martin DB7 has the Jag rear end as well, so it's almost like a rebodied XJS fundamentally. So yeah, they're just a bulletproof engine. I've had quite a few XJ40s and X300s through the years, and one thing, although there's many things that go wrong with them, rust-wise, electric-wise, just about anywhere else, the fundamental engines are exceptionally good. So yeah, we're in the process of splitting this apart, ready to rebuild it, which fundamentally will be, you know, cosmetic reasons. I mean, it will need rebearing it and obviously put all new parts, sort of wearing parts in it. We could have quite easily just put this in the car, because I know these engines go on and go on and go on without problems. But obviously we're trying to build, as with all the cars, we're trying to build them to essentially be a new car, and actually, even from a cosmetic point of view, to acceptably refinish everything, you need everything in its individual components anyway. So once you've got to that point, you know, it makes sense to go through and replace things that need replacing. But it's looking pretty good. It's a little bit of wear on one main bearing. Others look pretty mint, so it doesn't look like there's any cause for concern. All the journals look good on the crank, which is huge. So yeah, it'll be a case of new bearings. The bores look extremely good. I think we'll be able to just re-ring it and hone the bores and not rebore it. One thing we did notice, interestingly, is that this liner is not flush with the top. Normally what they do on these is the liners are dropped in, they're normally kind of cold shrunk in, and they go down onto a register in the bottom of the block. And then they would machine the top face of the block so that the liners and the top of the block are all machine flush. And interestingly, what looks like from the factory, this one's slightly short, and the gasket sort of shows the same slight indentation, and it doesn't look to us as if this has ever been apart. So I suspect this was actually a defect from the factory on it. But I think what we'll do, just to be on the safe side, is deck this block. It doesn't look like it's a huge amount, just to get that machined true with all the others. So yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to be, hopefully, a massive job. It's just going to be going through everything. We're going to strip the head down. We'll ice blast probably all of the aluminium castings, inspect everything, new bearings, deck the block, and start building everything back together with new gaskets and seals everywhere. So yeah, looking forward to cracking through that. I know Adam's been doing this work and he's been very excited. He loves this kind of precision engineering. He's a bit of a Jaguar fan as well, so it's definitely a project he's been looking forward to getting into, this engine build. And speaking of Jaguar, I'm going to go and see what George has been up to E-Type design-wise. Now, it may be called Retro Bar and Cut, but on this occasion, to avoid us falling up the stairs in an unattractive fashion, I'm going to cut to upstairs. As if by magic, look at that. Look at me, your social media cuts and stuff. Right, George is very keen for me to point out that this desk isn't normally this much of a mess. He's in the process of testing, lies, yes, he's in the process of testing the door handle assemblies. So it's actually a good opportunity moment for me to show you the diagram he put together. So we've designed and machined all of the parts for the door handles on the Escorts. And this is a diagram that George has put together essentially to assist the assembly of said parts. So we're just doing a trial fit at the minute. So this is the assembly as it all goes together in the end. I have been through this before, but I might as well do it again. Is that the purpose of this is multiple reasons. One, so we could get the surface finish we wanted on the handles as an anodized finish, rather than painted or the plating of the original kind of cast handles, which are not very good. We wanted to isolate the button from the main part so it doesn't get scratching on it, which has been done with a little nylon bush, which I saw around here, some of these, which sit inside there. And we wanted to convert the motion so that we could use the later style door latches. Because on the early style handles, the lock essentially just stops you being able to press the button, so there's no external moving part on it, so you can't use a central locking actuator on it. So we wanted to convert that motion to use the later style latches. We have external moving parts for the locks. So yes, it's coming together. Hopefully this will all work, otherwise I'll be crying. And the bulk of what George is on with at the minute is E-Type interior design. So this is Project Norman. We previously showed all of the rear bodywork being designed, and then where we got to is not in this model at the minute, but we'll put some B-roll over it. But the rear part of the cockpit, essentially the shape where the rear bodywork transitions to the cabin area, was the bit we needed to work on next, because metalwork wise we've got to do, look at that, was like magic, huh? Well, that's the bodywork, not the interior bit, but we need to work on the metalwork around here where the rear interior panels mount. So we needed to get a plan in place for the shape of all of that before we could start that metalwork. And at that point, it kind of made sense for us to start getting the rest of the interior design roughed out so we could make sure it all worked together as a sort of cohesive design package. So we've kind of got the rear shape of this area in. There's going to be some opening cabinets in this area here, so you can open a compartment, put luggage in there. And our sort of broad plan at the moment is then this centre console that sweeps all the way up to the dash. Here there'll be an armrest that slides out from this back part, so it can be slid into various positions with detents. So it can be fully forward, sort of in the most comfortable position, or you can slide it back slightly to have access to some cup holders, which we're probably going to have in this area, and then slide it all the way back for a cubby hole. And then in terms of the main dash design, that's what we've been going over at the minute and just working out how we can get everything in, because we want to have a screen in there for displaying additional engine data on top of what's going to be available on the actual speedo and tacho. We're going to use these same sort of Smith style speedo and tacho, but these have been rebuilt by Peterson EV, stepper motor drives, etc., so we can run them CAN bus from the engine ECU we're going to run. Want to keep them simple though, so it's just a tacho and speedo and no additional stuff on those instruments. And the fascia space you get in an E-Type is remarkably small. It's only when you start trying to put more modern components into an old car like this, you suddenly realise how small they are. So we want to get some additional data somewhere. We also want audio and nav on a touchscreen, but also with some physical controls, so you can do your basic controls like volume and track skip without having to use a touchscreen. And for that we're going to use our sort of normal go-to, which is an Alpine freestyle unit, so we can have some buttons down in the console here somewhere for your common controls, and then the screen will be sitting up here. It's actually behind this fascia in the model at the minute. And then there'll be a section of dash fascia which will fold away in some fashion. We haven't quite decided how yet, whether it'll go up above the screen or down below it. But that will reveal the sort of nav and audio unit screen up there, but can be hidden away and look nice and elegant when it's not in use. And then we're going to
potentially put a Motec 5-inch display in the lower part of the console, so we can essentially get our engine data, etc. on there. But we can program different screens on that, so we could have something like an analog clock maybe on that when it's just in normal use, and then we can switch through to different menus. And then we're going to have a row of machine switches which we're going to make above that for the most common functions, things like headlights and blower fans most likely. So we're just trying to get the basic layout together at the minute and just work out that if everything can fit. We've been scanning the heating aircon unit that we may be using to see if we could get that behind the dash, which we can do in the model then before we start cutting any metal, and also assessing where we will have space for things like ECUs and PDMs, etc. So it's nice to get this shape roughed out at the minute so we can A, send this to the customer, make sure he's happy with how it looks, but also B, work out what we're going to have in terms of space for housing everything that we need to get in there. So that's what George is on with at the minute. If we pop out here briefly, I might do a second super social media slick cut in a minute, but Steve is taking over on the second of the Escort wiring harness builds at the minute. So this is Project Kuma's main wiring harness that's just in the early stages of laying out wires and cutting them to length, etc. And in the meantime, Alex is just doing some of the planning work for the engine harness, which will go in both cars. So that's that. And then to avoid a calamitous fall down the stairs, we might as well do another little cut. Ha! As if by magic, downstairs. E-type. So James has been on this, carrying on with the power steering plumbing installation. So that Mark II power steering reservoir assemblies have been built up with its new filter and seals, etc. now. And then he was doing the plumbing. So that has like a cast base on it, which has got threaded, female threaded holes in it, which we thought, fantastic. We can use male-to-male adapters for air-equipped type hoses then. Only the thread is the most bizarre thread we've ever come across. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. So I think we actually ended up machining our own male-to-male adapter on that, just because we couldn't get one off the shelf that was the right threads. And then on the pump itself, the feed from the reservoir, get my words out, is normally just a pushed-in spigot. Again, because we want it really to be threaded fittings throughout, we've taken that out and drilled and tapped the hole, put a male-to-male adapter in there, which is all looking pretty smart. So now I think with that reservoir in place and the pump all prepared, just making up the lines. In fact, I think he's done the lines, they're sat down there. So it's just a case of getting those lines clipped in place, which is, I believe, exactly what he's up to at the minute. And we'll keep moving forward with it. So that's where that's at. XJC, I might briefly mention actually, we're doing some revised heater control knobs on that. When we originally built it, we retained the original, I guess they're some kind of plastic. It's almost really brittle, like Bakelite almost, but I think it is just plastic on the sort of heater temperature and air direction and fan speed knobs. And they fell apart essentially because I think they were old and brittle. So we've just drawn up some new versions of those, which we're going to machine in acetal, which is kind of a tough plastic material, which will hopefully stand the test of time on that. And we're going to do a change to the audio system on that as well, but I'll run through that when we're actually doing it. Mustang, I think I mentioned before that we'd finally resolved the door card conundrum. I've got it back over the pit at the minute because we're just going through a problem we had on the transmission breather, which is exactly as it was supplied to us with the transmission, but it seems to have a habit of when you leave it sitting for a long while, I guess when the cooler and the torque converter drain into the transmission, you get a little drip of transmission fluid coming out of the breather. So we were just looking at routing that up a little bit higher to try and avoid that problem on that. So that's that. And then Kuma, really just going through the motions of getting this to the same stage as Project 1. So we've been doing things like crimping up all the air conditioning pipes, getting all the fuel lines fitted and routed, getting all the brake lines fitted and routed. I think have we got the door latches in this yet? No, we haven't. We've got the vintage air heat and AC unit fitted into this one now. So essentially just catching this up with Project 1. And Project 1 similar thing. We've now got through the oil plumbing, which was just, I think, sat on a table last week when we showed you, so the oil lines are all in it now. The fuel lines I think were sort of partially in, but then we've finished that installation now. We've been doing some work on the door latches, so this ties in actually with what I was showing you upstairs with the door handle, because we've got to do one modification on the door latch to do the link rod that joins the lock barrel in the driver's door to the appropriate part of the lock mechanism. Because we've used, as I said before, we've used the late style latches, our own handles, but originally the lock barrel actually acts directly on the latch rather than having a link rod, so we've just got to do a drilling in it. And then Anthony's been doing the central locking motor installation, getting those mounted in the doors, getting the link rods made up to the sort of push-pull pin locks on the interior, making those rods up as well actually. We only had one pair of those because we only had one car originally that had the late style doors with the push and pull pins on them. So we've made up a second set. We've also machined them to be metric threads on the top of them all, because we are making the little pins that go on the top of those as a little billet machine part, which we've done with a metric thread. So that's more progress. So yeah, we're really heading towards getting the doors finished off. So with those latches in, with the modifications done, we'll 12 fit the handles, make sure all the locking mechanism works as it should. Then the handles can go away for anodising. Now we've had a final answer on the exterior anodising finishes, and with that lot done and installed and the wiring connected up, we can get the door cards in, which I'm hoping will be here next week, because I know Dean has been working on those. He's also done the dash pad that sits at the top of the dash, so if he drops all of that lot off together, we should be in a position to get the dash pad in, vents in, doors buttoned up and door cards on, and it will really start to transform inside then. I guess talking about inside on this, Luke's also currently just patterning the kick panel, sort of trim panels, which we'll make up. It's just making sure that they're exactly the same sort of on both sides and on both cars, but we've got a pattern that looks close, so once we've finished with that pattern, he's just going to draw that up on CAD, export it as a DXF file and cut those panels out on our plasma cutter, and then Dean can take those as well to upholster those. So yes, it is all going in the right direction. And lurking over there, you'll see a very shiny looking Stratos, because that is, as far as I'm concerned, ready to go. And behind it, under a cover, is a very shiny looking Land Cruiser, because that is also ready to go. So we've got two cars over there under covers awaiting dispatch, if you like. And these ones rattling extremely closely towards their finish line. So it's exciting times all around. It's the very end of November coming up, and there seems to always be a massive peak in sales in our shop in December. Obviously run up to Christmas. So what I've done, I've put a little bundle together, which I did last year, of a load of our merch items together, which have a fairly substantial discount on the total price. So I think I've put in a package that's a t-shirt, hoodie, drinks bottle, mug, beanie and keyring, all as one package. So if you want the ultimate Christmas present for somebody who enjoys watching our videos, then go and buy yourself one of those. Grab yourself any other merch item you want. We've got plenty of stock in at the minute ahead of Christmas, and we shall see you as ever next week.